The Academy's main auditorium buzzed with excitement. Students from every corner of the galaxy had gathered for the opening ceremony of the War Games. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one showing the symbol of a different alien civilization. But there was one banner missing this year. The simple blue and green flag of Earth was nowhere to be seen. Hyunwoo sat in the back row with the other human students. They had been given seats in the observer section, far from the main floor where the competing teams sat. It felt like being punished for a crime they didn't understand. On the stage, Admiral Corinth stood behind a podium made of flowing water that somehow held its shape. His blue skin gleamed under the lights as he began his speech. "Welcome, cadets, to the 847th Annual War Games," the Admiral said. His voice carried easily through the large room. "This year, we return to the traditional format. 6 teams will compete in scenarios designed to test your understanding of proper military doctrine." Polite applause filled the auditorium, but Hyunwoo noticed that many of the alien students were looking back at the human section with smug expressions. "Each scenario has been carefully crafted to challenge your tactical thinking," Admiral Corinth continued. "You will be tested on resource management, strategic planning, and honorable combat techniques. May the best team prove their worth." When the Admiral finished, it was time for the team presentations. Each competing team would introduce themselves and explain their tactical philosophy. It was supposed to be educational, but Hyunwoo knew it would really be 6 different ways of insulting humans. Taiman's team went first. The reptilian cadet strutted up to the podium like he owned the place. His green scales caught the light as he smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Greetings, fellow warriors," Taiman began. "I am honored to represent the Saurian Empire in these games. Our tactics are based on 3,000 years of honorable warfare. We believe that true victory comes not just from winning, but from winning with dignity." He paused and looked directly at the human section. "War is not about chaos or random violence. It is about courage, honor, and following the ancient codes that separate civilized beings from wild animals. We fight with pride, knowing that how we win matters as much as whether we win." The Saurian students in the audience cheered loudly. Hyunwoo felt his face getting hot, but he stayed quiet. Next came Jihai's team from the Vorthan Collective, the crystalline being moved to the podium with precise, calculated steps. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music made of mathematics. "Logic will guide us to victory," Jihai announced. "The Vorthan Collective has spent centuries perfecting the science of warfare. Every battle can be reduced to equations. Every victory can be predicted through proper analysis." She held up a glowing crystal that projected complex charts and graphs into the air. "We have studied every successful military campaign in galactic history. We have identified the patterns that lead to victory and the mistakes that lead to defeat. Random chance has no place in true military strategy." Again, her gaze found the human section. "Some may claim that chaos and unpredictability are strengths. This is false. What appears to be successful chaos is simply the observer's failure to understand the underlying mathematics. All warfare follows logical rules. Those who ignore these rules may occasionally succeed through luck, but luck always runs out." The applause for Jihai was quieter but more respectful. Hyunwoo could see other students nodding along with her words. Woojin's team was next. The insect-like klaxon moved all 4 of his arms in perfect synchronization as he approached the podium. When he spoke, it was like listening to 100 voices saying the same words at exactly the same time. "The hive mind thinks as one," Woojin buzzed. "Unity of thought creates unity of action. Our tactics flow from perfect coordination and shared understanding. Each member of our team knows instantly what the others are thinking." His large, multifaceted eyes seemed to look at everyone in the room at once. Some species rely on individual creativity and spontaneous decisions. This creates weakness. When each warrior follows their own instincts, the result is confusion and conflict. True strength comes from moving together as a single organism. The other teams followed with similar presentations. Echo from the Ethereal Collective spoke about warfare as an art form, beautiful and graceful. The Mechanical Union's representative talked about precision engineering and flawless execution. Each speech contained the same hidden message. Humans were primitive, chaotic, and wrong. So-young was gripping the armrest of her chair so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. "I can't listen to much more of this," she whispered to Hyunwoo, but the worst was yet to come. After all the team presentations, Taiman asked for permission to make an additional statement. Admiral Corinth looked surprised but nodded. Taemin returned to the podium with an even bigger smile than before. "Fellow students," he began, "I think we should take a moment to acknowledge something important. For the first time in 3 years, we can have war games that actually teach us something useful." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience. "I don't wish to speak badly of any species," Taemin continued, though his tone suggested the opposite. "But we all know that the previous 3 years were unusual. Certain tactics were employed that had no basis in military science. Victories were achieved through methods that could not be studied or replicated." He paused for dramatic effect. "Today we return to proper warfare. Today we will see what real military strategy looks like. Today we will remember why our ancestors developed codes of honor and rules of engagement. Because without these things, war becomes nothing more than mindless destruction." The applause this time was thunderous. Students jumped to their feet, cheering and whistling. Even some of the alien instructors were clapping. Hyunwoo felt sick to his stomach. Around him, the other human students looked ready to either cry or start a fight. But So-young looked different. She looked determined. When the applause finally died down, So-young stood up. The entire auditorium turned to look at her. The room became so quiet that Hyunwoo could hear his own heartbeat. "Excuse me," So-young called out. Her voice carried clearly in the silence. "May I request permission to address the assembly?" Admiral Corinth looked confused. "Cadet So-young, you are not a competing team member. This is not the appropriate time for—" "I'm invoking Educational Protocol 7, So-young interrupted. "Any cadet may request a learning opportunity if they believe it will benefit the entire student body." The Admiral's gills fluttered nervously. Educational Protocol 7 was rarely used, but it was an official rule. He couldn't refuse without good reason. "Very well," Admiral Corinth said slowly. "What learning opportunity do you wish to propose?" So-young walked down the steps to the main floor. Every eye in the room followed her. "I would like to request a viewing session of archived war games footage. Specifically, the footage from the previous 3 years showing human tactical decisions." The room erupted in confused chatter. Taemin looked like someone had just told him his favorite food was poisoned. "For what educational purpose?" Admiral Corinth asked. "Several students have expressed interest in understanding how human teams achieved their victories," So-young replied. "Since there seems to be confusion about whether our tactics were based on luck or skill, I thought it would be educational for everyone to see the actual footage and judge for themselves." Ji-hai stood up from her team section. "The statistical analysis of those victories is unnecessary. The mathematical models clearly show—" "With respect," So-young interrupted, "mathematical models are based on assumptions. The footage shows what actually happened. Wouldn't it be more scientific to examine the raw data before drawing conclusions?" Hyunwoo could see Ji-hai struggling with this logic. As a being who worshipped mathematics and science, she couldn't argue against examining actual data. Taemin tried a different approach. "Surely our time would be better spent preparing for the current games rather than dwelling on past events." "I agree," So-young said with a small smile. "But several students seem very interested in discussing those past events. I heard quite a lot of conversation about chaos, luck, and primitive tactics. I thought it would be helpful to show everyone exactly what those tactics looked like." The challenge hung in the air like a thrown weapon. Hyunwoo realized what So-young was doing. She was using their own arrogance against them. After spending so much time mocking human tactics, they couldn't refuse to watch the footage without looking scared. Woo Jin's forearms moved in agitation. "The hive mind is curious about human decision-making processes. We agree to the viewing." "As do I," said Ji-hai. "Scientific analysis requires complete data." One by one, the other team leaders agreed. They couldn't back down now without losing face in front of the entire academy. Admiral Corinth looked like he had just swallowed something unpleasant. "Very well. I will arrange for a viewing session after the current war games conclude. The footage will be made available for educational analysis." As the ceremony continued and the teams prepared for their first scenario, Hyunwoo caught up with So-young in the corridor outside the auditorium. "What exactly are you planning?" he asked quietly. 3 days had passed since the war games ended. The results were exactly what everyone expected. Taemin's team won first place using traditional Saurian honor tactics. Ji-hai's team came in second with their mathematical precision. Woo Jin's hive mind coordination earned them third place. Everything was orderly, predictable, and properly civilized. Now the Academy's largest classroom had been converted into a viewing theater. Rows of seats faced a massive holographic display that could show three-dimensional battle footage with perfect detail. Every competing team was there, along with dozens of other students who had heard about the special viewing session. Hyunwoo sat with the other human students in the back rows. They had been quiet for the past 3 days, watching the alien teams execute their careful traditional strategies. The games had been boring, if he was honest. Each team had followed standard military doctrine exactly as their instructors taught them. There had been no surprises, no unexpected moves, no moments of genuine tension. Admiral Corinth stood at the front of the room looking uncomfortable. "Before we begin," he announced, "I want to remind everyone that this viewing is for educational purposes only. The footage you are about to see contains tactical decisions that do not represent Academy-approved doctrine." Laughter rippled through the alien students. Taemin was grinning widely, his sharp teeth glinting in the light. "Don't worry, Admiral. We're prepared to see some entertaining chaos." "Yeah," called out another Saurian student. "We want to see these famous human tactics that were so amazing." More laughter filled the room. Hyunwoo felt his cheeks burning with embarrassment, but So Young just sat calmly, watching the big screen. "Very well," Admiral Corinth said. "We'll begin with the footage from 3 years ago." The scenario was called the Siege of Titan Base. The objective was to defend a mining facility against overwhelming enemy forces for 72 hours until reinforcements could arrive. The holographic display came to life, showing a detailed three-dimensional map. Titan Base sat in the center of a rocky, airless moon. It was surrounded by mining equipment, storage tanks, and defensive walls. The base looked strong and well protected. "This scenario has been used for over 200 years, Admiral Corinth explained. In all that time, no team has ever successfully completed the objective. The enemy force is simply too large. The best any team has ever done is hold out for 43 hours before being overrun." Ji-Hai raised one of her crystalline hands. "What was the mathematical probability of success?" "According to our calculations, 0.03%, the Admiral replied. "Essentially impossible," the alien students chuckled. This was going to be good entertainment. The footage began to play. Hyunwoo watched himself from 3 years ago. Younger and less experienced, but still recognizably him. The hologram showed his team studying the base layout and enemy approach patterns. Standard defensive doctrine calls for reinforcing the walls and establishing overlapping fields of fire. Admiral Corinth narrated. "Let's see what the human team decided to do." On screen, young Hyunwoo was talking with his teammates. The audio was crystal clear. "The walls won't hold," hologram Hyunwoo was saying. "They have too many troops and too much firepower. If we try to defend this place normally, we'll be dead in 6 hours. So what do you suggest?" hologram So Young asked. "We abandon it." The viewing room erupted in laughter. "Abandon it?" Taemin called out. "That's their brilliant strategy. Run away?" "Wait, it gets better," said another alien student. "Watch this." On screen, the human team was moving through the base, placing explosives in key locations. They weren't just leaving, they were rigging the entire facility to blow up. "Cowards," sneered a Vorthan student. "They're destroying their own objective rather than defend it with honor." But Hyunwoo noticed that Admiral Corinth wasn't laughing. The old Nereid was watching intently, his large eyes focused on every detail. The footage continued. The human team finished placing their explosives and then did something even more shocking. They left the base completely, hiking out into the rocky wilderness of the moon's surface. "This is pathetic," Taemin said loudly. "They're not even trying to fight. They're just hiding in the rocks like insects." More laughter filled the room. Some students were actually pointing at the screen and making jokes. Hyunwoo wanted to disappear into his chair, but So Young wasn't laughing. She was watching the alien students with a small, knowing smile. On screen, the enemy forces arrived. They were exactly as overwhelming as promised. Hundreds of troops, dozens of vehicles, and enough firepower to level a small city. They surrounded the abandoned base and moved in carefully, expecting heavy resistance. Instead, they found nothing. Empty buildings, abandoned equipment, and no sign of the defending team. The enemy commander was confused, Admiral Corinth explained. This had never happened before. He spent 2 hours searching the base for traps before declaring it captured. The alien students cheered sarcastically. "Brilliant defense," Taemin called out. They let the enemy walk right in without firing a shot. But then something changed on screen. The enemy forces had spread out through the base, setting up their own equipment and establishing their command post in the main building. They thought they had won easily. That's when the explosion started. The charges the humans had planted weren't designed to destroy the base. They were carefully placed to create maximum confusion. Power went out in some sections. Communication arrays went dead. Storage tanks began leaking, creating clouds of vapor that blocked visibility. And in the chaos, the human team struck. They came from 6 different directions at once, moving through the rock formations like ghosts. Each team member had memorized the terrain perfectly during their earlier hike. They knew every boulder, every crater, every place to hide or take cover. The enemy forces found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't see in a base they no longer understood. The humans used the confusion from their own explosions to capture key positions. They turned the enemy's own weapons against them. They moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. The laughter in the viewing room was starting to fade. Students were leaning forward, trying to understand what they were seeing. How are they doing that? Jihai asked, her mathematical mind struggling to process the chaos on screen. There's no pattern to their movements, no logical sequence. That's because you're thinking like a defender, So Young said quietly from the back of the room. They're not defending anymore. They're hunting. On screen, the battle continued. The human team didn't try to hold ground. They kept moving, striking and vanishing like wolves attacking a herd. Every time the enemy forces organized a response, the humans had already moved to a new position. But the most shocking moment came when the human team captured the enemy command ship. They had used the explosion-created chaos to get close, then coordinated a perfect assault that used the confusion to mask their approach. The enemy commander found himself captured by the very people he thought were cowering in the rocks. Worse, his own troops were scattered through the base, lost and confused in territory they had thought they controlled. The footage showed the final result. Not only had the human team successfully defended Titan Base, they had captured the entire enemy force. 0 casualties on their side. Complete victory achieved in 18 hours instead of the expected 72. The viewing room was completely silent now. No one was laughing. No one was making jokes. Even Tae-min looked stunned. Admiral Corinth paused the footage. The human team turned a defensive scenario into an offensive victory. They used the enemy's expectations against them and transformed their own apparent weakness into strength. Jihai was staring at the frozen image on screen. Her crystalline features were flickering with rapid calculations. The mathematics don't work, she said slowly. According to every model, they should have lost. Badly. Maybe your models are wrong, So Young suggested gently. Models don't lie, Jihai protested. Mathematics is absolute. Mathematics assumes you know all the variables, Hyunwoo said, speaking up for the first time. What if there are variables you never thought to include? Wu Jin's forearms were moving in agitated patterns. The hive mind is confused. These tactics follow no recognizable doctrine. How did you coordinate such complex movements without a unified command structure? We practiced, So Young replied simply. We spent weeks learning that terrain. We memorized every rock, every shadow, every possible approach route. When the time came, we didn't need to communicate because we already knew what everyone else would do. But that's impossible, protested Echo from the Ethereal Collective. No one can predict chaos. We weren't predicting chaos, Hyunwoo explained. We were creating it. There's a difference. Taemin finally found his voice, but it sounded much less confident than before. This was just luck. Random chance. It couldn't possibly work twice, So Young's smile grew wider. Admiral Corinth, could we see the footage from Year 2? The Nebula campaign? The Admiral looked around the room at all the confused, stunned faces. Are you certain you want to continue? Oh yes, So Young said sweetly. I think everyone is really starting to learn something important. Hyunwoo could see the growing unease on the alien students' faces. The silence in the viewing room felt heavy and uncomfortable. Students who had been laughing and joking just minutes before now sat quietly, staring at the blank holographic display. Admiral Corinth looked around the room, noting the changed atmosphere. The second scenario, the Admiral began slowly, was called the Nebula campaign. This took place entirely in space, within a nebula that disrupted all long-range sensors and communications. Teams were given control of small fleets and asked to complete strategic objectives while essentially fighting blind. The holographic display shifted to show a swirling cloud of purple and blue gas, shot through with electrical storms and cosmic debris. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Small dots represented the various ships that teams could command. The nebula environment was specifically chosen to test leadership and coordination under extreme conditions. Admiral Corinth continued, "When you can't see your enemy and can't talk to your own forces, traditional military doctrine becomes very difficult to execute." Jihi raised her hand. "What was the standard approach to this scenario?" "Maintain formation," the admiral replied. "Keep your ships close together so you don't lose contact. Move slowly and carefully. Establish communication relays. Follow established fleet tactics even when you can't see what you're doing." Taman nodded approvingly. Sensible, honorable, the proper way to handle difficult conditions. "Let's see how the human team approached the problem," Admiral Corinth said as he started the footage. The display showed the human fleet at the edge of the nebula. It was a small force, just 12 ships of various sizes. On screen, 2 years ago, Hyunwoo was standing on the bridge of the command vessel talking with his officers. "Standard doctrine says stay together," hologram Hyunwoo was saying. "But if we do that, we'll be moving as slow as our slowest ship, and we'll be a big target for anyone who spots us." "So what's the alternative?" asked hologram So Young from her position at the tactical station. "We split up. Every ship goes in alone." The alien students in the viewing room stirred uneasily. Even they could see that this violated every basic principle of fleet command. "That's suicide," breathed Echo. "You never divide your forces when you can't communicate." On screen, the human fleet was indeed splitting apart. Each ship was heading into the nebula alone, taking a different route toward the objective. Within minutes, they had disappeared into the swirling gas clouds. "This is madness," Wu Jin buzzed. "How can they coordinate without communication? How can they support each other if they don't know where anyone else is?" Admiral Corinth paused the footage. "Those are excellent questions. Let's see how the humans solved these problems." The view shifted to follow one of the separated human ships as it moved deeper into the nebula. The captain was a young human woman who moved with quick, confident gestures. She was studying sensor readings that showed almost nothing useful. "She can't see anything," Ji-Hai observed. "No tactical data, no fleet positions, no enemy contacts. How can she make decisions without information?" The footage continued. The human captain was indeed flying blind, but she wasn't acting randomly. She was following a carefully planned route, using the nebula's natural features as navigation points. When she encountered debris fields, she used them as cover. When she found electrical storms, she used them to mask her ship's energy signature. "They're not trying to fight the nebula," So Young explained from the back of the viewing room. "They're using it as a weapon." On screen, the captain had found an enemy patrol. 3 ships were moving in tight formation, following standard doctrine. They were staying together, moving slowly, trying to maintain communication with their base. The human ship attacked from inside an electrical storm. The enemy ships never saw it coming. Their sensors were blinded by the storm's interference, and their formations made them easy targets. One moment they were patrolling peacefully. The next moment they were under attack by an enemy that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "But how did she know they would be there?" Taemin asked, his voice showing the first hints of uncertainty. The footage rewound to show the planning session before the mission began. The human team was studying maps of the nebula, marking patterns in the gas flows, electrical activity, and debris distribution. "The nebula isn't random," hologram So Young was explaining to her teammates. "It has currents just like an ocean. If you follow standard doctrine, you'll naturally be pushed along certain paths by those currents. So we can predict where the enemy will be," hologram Hyunwoo added, "even though they can't predict where we'll be." The alien students were beginning to understand, and they didn't like what they were seeing. "They studied the environment first," Ji-Hai said slowly. "They turned the nebula's properties into tactical advantages." While everyone else saw it as an obstacle to overcome, Wu Jin observed. The footage continued, showing more encounters. Each human ship was fighting independently, but they weren't fighting randomly. Every attack was perfectly timed. Every ambush was set up to use the nebula's natural features for maximum advantage. And then something remarkable happened. The separated human ships began to find each other again, not through communication, but through a series of pre-planned signals. "Look at that," Admiral Corinth said, highlighting specific moments in the footage. "They're using reflected starlight to send messages. The position of that debris field indicates a rendezvous point. Those electrical discharges aren't natural. They're artificial signals created by overloading their own systems. They turned the entire nebula into a communication network," Echo whispered in amazement. But the most impressive moment came when the human fleet reformed for their final assault on the enemy base. They had spent hours fighting separately, but when they came together, they moved with perfect coordination. "How is that possible?" Taman demanded. "They had no contact with each other for most of the battle. How can they coordinate so perfectly?" So Young stood up. "Because we knew the plan from the beginning. Every ship captain knew exactly what everyone else was supposed to do, and when they were supposed to do it. We didn't need to communicate because we had already communicated everything that mattered." The footage showed the final assault. The enemy base was well defended, surrounded by patrol ships and defensive platforms. But the human attack came from 12 different directions at once, each ship arriving at exactly the right moment to support the others. "It's like watching a dance," Echo said softly. "But how can you dance when you can't see your partners?" "Practice," Yunwoo replied simply. "We spent weeks learning to work together without communication. We memorized each other's fighting styles, response times, and decision patterns. When the time came, we didn't need to talk because we already knew what everyone would do." The enemy base fell in less than an hour. The human fleet had achieved complete victory while suffering only minor damage to 2 ships. They had turned a scenario designed to test leadership under impossible conditions into a demonstration of perfect teamwork. But the footage wasn't over yet. Admiral Corinth called up the third-year scenario, the diplomatic crisis. This scenario was completely different, the Admiral explained. No fighting at all. Teams were asked to prevent a 3-way civil war between alien factions, while managing limited resources and political pressure. The display showed a complex political situation. 3 different alien groups were on the verge of declaring war on each other over trade disputes, territorial claims, and old grudges. Previous teams had tried everything: negotiation, mediation, choosing sides, offering bribes. Nothing had ever worked. The expected solution time was 3 weeks, Admiral Corinth said. The best any team had ever done was reduce the fighting to a limited border conflict. No one had ever achieved actual peace. Then what was the human approach? Ji-Hai asked, though she sounded like she wasn't sure she wanted to know. The footage began to play. 1 year ago, Hyunwoo was sitting in a meeting with representatives from all 3 factions. They were arguing loudly, making demands, and threatening each other with violence. Then, hologram Hyunwoo did something that stunned everyone in the viewing room. He stood up and announced that humans were the real enemy of all 3 factions. Your trade disputes, your territorial claims, your old grudges, they're all small problems compared to what Earth is planning. Hologram Hyunwoo told the shocked alien representatives. We've been playing you against each other to keep you weak while we prepare for invasion. The alien students in the viewing room were speechless. Taemin's mouth was hanging open. He's lying to them, Woojin buzzed in disbelief. He's making himself the enemy. On screen, the 3 factions were forgetting their own disputes and uniting against the human threat. But then, hologram So Young entered the room with a proposal. Earth doesn't want to fight you, she told the now united alien representatives. We only want to protect ourselves. If you can prove that your 3 factions can work together peacefully, we'll have no reason to consider you a threat. It's brilliant, Echo breathed. They created a fake external enemy to force internal cooperation. The footage showed the final result. Faced with a common threat, the 3 factions had not only stopped their civil war but had actually formed a mutual defense alliance. Admiral Corinth stood at the front of the silent viewing room, his blue skin seeming to glow under the harsh lights. The holographic display behind him had gone dark, but the images from the 3 scenarios still seemed to hang in the air like ghosts. Every alien student in the room looked stunned, confused, or deeply troubled. Before we continue, the Admiral said slowly, I need to tell you something that the Academy Council has kept classified until now. He touched a control panel, and official documents appeared on the display. Classification stamps, meeting notes, and statistical analyses filled the screen. The human ban was not implemented because their tactics were unrealistic, Admiral Corinth announced. It was implemented because they were too realistic. Shocked murmurs filled the room. Taman leaned forward in his seat.
What does that mean?
Admiral Corinth's large, fish-like eyes swept across the assembled students. Every alien military doctrine is based on evolutionary advantages. Saurians fight with honor because your species evolved from apex predators who dominated through individual strength and courage. You developed codes of honor because the strongest survived by proving their worth in single combat. Taman's reptilian features showed confusion. Of course, honor and strength are the foundations of warfare. Vorthans use mathematical precision, the Admiral continued, because your species evolved from crystalline structures that grew in perfect geometric patterns. Your minds naturally think in terms of equations and logical sequences. You see warfare as a problem to be solved through calculation. Jihai's diamond-like body flickered with rapid calculations. Mathematical analysis provides certainty. Warfare is simply applied mathematics. Klaxons think collectively because you evolved from hive insects, Admiral Corinth said, turning to Wu Jin. Your strength comes from unity of thought and coordinated action. You see warfare as a group activity where individual creativity is weakness. Wu Jin's forearms moved in synchronized patterns. The hive mind provides perfect coordination. Individual thinking creates chaos, Admiral Corinth nodded. Each of your species developed military doctrines that play to your evolutionary strengths. Honor for the strong, logic for the intelligent, unity for the collective. These approaches work because they match how your minds naturally function. He paused and looked directly at the human section. But humans are different. The display changed to show images of Earth, not the peaceful, civilized Earth that most aliens knew, but the harsh, dangerous world that had shaped humanity for millions of years. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, massive predators, and endless environmental disasters filled the screen. Humans evolved as persistence hunters on a death world, Admiral Corinth explained. Your planet tried to kill you with climate change, predators, diseases, and natural disasters for millions of years. Your species survived not because you were the strongest or the smartest or the most unified, but because you were the most adaptable. Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard anyone explain human evolution this way before. Other species evolved to excel in specific environments, the Admiral continued. Humans evolved to survive in environments that kept changing. When the climate shifted, you adapted. When predators hunted you, you learned to hunt them back. When diseases threatened you, you developed immunity. When your own kind fought you, you learned to fight better. The images on screen showed human history. Wars, plagues, migrations, and endless struggles for survival. Your military thinking isn't bound by evolutionary programming, Admiral Corinth said. It's shaped by survival necessity. You don't fight to prove honor or solve equations or achieve unity. You fight to survive, and when survival is at stake, any tactic that works becomes acceptable. So Young stood up slowly. You're saying we cheat? No, Admiral Corinth replied. I'm saying you think differently about what constitutes fair play. When faced with extinction, humans don't ask whether a tactic is honorable or logical or unified. You ask whether it will keep you alive. The room was silent except for the soft humming of the air recycling systems. Students were processing this information, and many of them looked deeply uncomfortable. The Academy Council realized something after reviewing 3 years of human victories, Admiral Corinth continued. You weren't playing our war games. You were fighting for your species' survival. Every scenario, every decision, every seemingly impossible tactic, you approached it as if humanity's existence depended on the outcome. Timon's voice was barely a whisper. That's why our tactics don't work against them. We're playing a game, but they're fighting a war. Exactly, Admiral Corinth confirmed. And that's why the Academy Council banned human participation. Not because you were unrealistic, but because you were too realistic. The war games are supposed to be educational exercises, but humans turned them into actual warfare. Echo from the ethereal collective spoke up, her voice trembling. If human tactics are so effective, why didn't you teach them to the rest of us? Admiral Corinth looked sad. Because we tried. After the first year, several instructors attempted to teach human tactical thinking to alien students. The results were disturbing. New footage appeared on the display. It showed alien students trying to implement human-style tactics. But something was wrong. The Saurians became savage and abandoned all honor. The Vorthans became paralyzed by too many variables to calculate. The Klaxons broke apart as individuals tried to think independently. Human tactics require human thinking, Admiral Corinth explained. You evolved to handle chaos, uncertainty, and survival pressure. Other species did not. When we try to think like humans, we break. Wu Jin's forearms moved in agitated patterns. The hive mind attempted to process survival thinking. The result was system failure. Individual thoughts created conflict. Unity was lost. We're not better than you, Hyunwoo said, standing up to address the room. We're just different. Your tactics work perfectly for your species. Honor tactics work when you're fighting honorable enemies. Logic works when you have complete information. Unity works when you face predictable challenges. He paused, looking around at all the alien faces. But what happens when you face something that doesn't follow your rules? What happens when you fight an enemy that's not honorable, not logical, not unified? What happens when you face something that just wants to survive? The question hung in the air like a challenge. That's what we are, So Young added, rejoining the conversation. We're the thing that doesn't follow the rules. We're what happens when evolution teaches a species that the only rule is survival. Timon stood up slowly, his earlier arrogance completely gone. I need to understand this. My honor-based tactics work when fighting honorable enemies. But what happens when we face something in space that fights to survive? Then you learn to survive too, So Young replied gently. Or you lose everything. Admiral Corinth cleared his throat. Which brings us to the real reason for today's demonstration. The Academy Council has made a decision. New documents appeared on the display. Official orders, policy changes, and curriculum modifications filled the screen. The human ban is lifted, effective immediately, Admiral Corinth announced. But with conditions. Human teams will be placed in advanced tactical courses, and any alien student who wishes to learn survival-based thinking may request to train with human instructors. Surprised murmurs filled the room. This was not what anyone had expected. Additionally, the Admiral continued, the Academy is implementing a new course called Asymmetric Warfare. It will teach how to fight enemies who don't follow conventional military doctrine, how to handle opponents who are desperate, unpredictable, or fighting for their very existence. Jihai raised her hand. Will this course be mandatory? No, Admiral Corinth replied. It will be voluntary. Not every species needs to learn human-style tactics. But in a galaxy full of unknown threats, some of you might want to understand how to think like something that has nothing left to lose. Taemin walked over to where Hyunwoo was sitting. The proud Saurian looked humbled, almost vulnerable. Would you teach me? I want to understand how to fight something that doesn't care about honor. Other students began to stand up. Wu Jin approached with all forearms moving nervously. The hive mind wishes to learn individual survival thinking, even if it causes system conflict. Jihai was slower to move, but eventually she came forward too. My mathematical models failed to predict human behavior. I need to understand variables I cannot calculate. One by one, students from different species approached the humans. Not all of them. Some looked scared or disgusted by what they had learned. But many were curious, humble, and eager to learn. So Young looked around at all the alien faces, seeing respect instead of mockery for the first time in years. Learning to think like humans won't be easy, she warned them. You'll have to accept chaos, embrace uncertainty, and consider tactics that your instincts tell you are wrong. We understand, Taemin said solemnly. But if we're going to survive in a dangerous galaxy, we need to learn from the species that evolved to survive anything. Admiral Corinth watched as human and alien students began to form mixed groups, planning training sessions and discussing tactical philosophy. The mockery was gone, replaced by genuine curiosity and mutual respect. The morning alarm rang across the Galactic Military Academy like it did every day. Students from dozens of different worlds crawled out of their sleeping pods and got ready for another day of training. But today was different. Today, everyone was talking about the new rule. Hyunwoo stood in front of his locker, staring at the official notice that had been posted on every wall in the dormitory. The words were simple, but they hit him like a punch to the stomach. Effective immediately, human students are banned from participating in the annual War Games simulation. This is crazy, So Young said as she walked up behind him. She was his teammate and best friend at the academy. Her voice was angry, but Hyunwoo could hear the hurt underneath. 3 years. We won 3 years in a row, and this is how they thank us. Hyunwoo crumpled the notice in his fist. Around them, other human students were reading the same announcement. Some looked angry. Others looked confused. A few just looked sad. They say our tactics are too disruptive, Hyunwoo said, reading from another copy of the notice. Too chaotic for proper military education. What does that even mean? Down the hallway, a group of alien students was laughing loudly. Hyunwoo recognized the voice leading the laughter. It was Tae-min, a tall reptilian student from the Saurian Empire. His green scales always seemed to shine a little brighter when he was being mean. Finally, Tae-min was saying to his friends, now we can have real military exercises again, not this primitive nonsense the humans call strategy. So Young's hands clenched into fists. I should go over there and show him some primitive nonsense. Don't, Hyunwoo said quietly. That's exactly what they expect from us. They think we're just violent animals who got lucky. More alien students were gathering around Tae-min now. There was Ji-hai, a crystalline being from the Vorthan Collective. Her body looked like it was made of living diamond, and she always spoke like she was solving a math problem. Next to her stood Woo Jin, an insect-like klaxon whose forearms moved in perfect coordination as he gestured. The statistical probability of human victories was mathematically impossible, Ji-hai was saying in her cold, precise voice. Their wins clearly resulted from random chaos, not skill. The Academy Council made the logical decision. My hive brothers agree, Woo Jin added, his voice buzzing like a swarm of bees. Human tactics follow no recognizable pattern. They are unpredictable to the point of madness. Hyunwoo felt his anger growing, but he forced himself to stay calm. Getting angry wouldn't help anything. It would just prove their point. The announcement had come from Admiral Corinth himself. The Academy's headmaster was an old Nereid, one of the aquatic species that ruled the ocean worlds. His blue skin was covered in ritual scars that showed his rank, and when he spoke, everyone listened. Hyunwoo remembered the meeting from yesterday. Admiral Corinth had called all the human students into his office. The room smelled like salt water, and the Admiral's gills fluttered nervously as he spoke. This decision was not made lightly, the Admiral had said, but the Academy Council has reviewed your performance over the past 3 years. Your methods, while effective, do not align with accepted military doctrine. But we won, So Young had protested. Isn't winning the point? Admiral Corinth's large fish-like eyes had focused on her. The point, young cadet, is education. The war games are designed to teach proper military strategy to future officers. Your human teams have consistently violated every principle of civilized warfare. Civilized warfare? Hyunwoo had asked. What does that mean? It means following rules, the Admiral had replied. It means using tactics that can be studied, understood, and replicated. Your victories appear to come from pure chaos. How can we teach chaos to other students? The meeting had ended badly. The human students had been told they could still attend classes and watch the war games, but they could not participate. They were observers now, nothing more. Back in the present, Hyunwoo watched as more alien students joined the group around Tae-min. Word was spreading fast about the human ban, and everyone seemed happy about it. Perhaps now the war games will return to their proper purpose, said a tall, graceful student from the ethereal collective. Her name was impossible for humans to pronounce, so everyone just called her Echo. Military strategy should be beautiful, like art, not this brutal ugliness the humans brought to it. Exactly, Tae-min agreed. War is an art form. It requires honor, courage, and proper tactics. The humans fight like cornered animals. There's no honor in that. So Young started to move toward them again, but Hyunwoo caught her arm. Let it go, he whispered. But So Young shook her head. No, I'm tired of letting it go. I'm tired of pretending we don't hear what they say about us. She walked over to the group of alien students. Hyunwoo followed, worried about what might happen. Excuse me, So Young said politely. I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about honor and proper tactics. Tae-min turned to look at her, his reptilian face showing amusement. Yes? Do you have something to say about that, human? I was wondering, So Young continued, still keeping her voice calm, if you'd be interested in seeing exactly how we won those 3 war games. The Academy has all the footage recorded. Every move, every decision, every battle. The alien students looked at each other. Ji-hai's crystalline features seemed to brighten with interest. The footage is classified, she said. Actually, it's not, So Young replied. It's educational material. Any student can request to view it for learning purposes. I thought you might want to see what chaotic primitive tactics actually look like. Taemin's chest puffed out with pride. You think watching your random flailing would teach us something? Maybe, So Young said with a small smile. Or maybe you'd just get a good laugh out of it. Either way, wouldn't you like to see how lucky we got? 3 times in a row? The challenge hung in the air like a weapon. Hyunwoo realized what So Young was doing. She was using their own arrogance against them. They couldn't refuse to watch now without looking scared. Fine, Taemin said finally. It might be amusing to see how badly you embarrassed yourselves. When? I'll talk to Admiral Corinth, So Young said. I'm sure he'd approve a viewing session. For educational purposes, of course. As they walked away, Hyunwoo whispered to So Young, What are you planning? She looked back at the group of alien students, who were already talking excitedly about watching the human footage. I'm planning to show them exactly what they asked for, she said quietly. The truth about how we fight. All of it. Hyunwoo felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that look in So Young's eyes. It was the same look she got right before she did something that seemed completely crazy, but somehow worked perfectly. The war games would start tomorrow without any human teams. But maybe, just maybe, the real education was about to begin.